AITA for banning Karen's kids from my yard. I, 29F, bought my first home last year. It's nothing fancy, but it has a small yard and a big oak tree that made me fall in love with it instantly. I imagined summer nights, BBQs with friends, maybe kids playing under that tree one day. For 2 weeks, it was perfect. Then I met my neighbor, let's call her Karen. First thing she said wasn't hello. She pointed at the oak and said, "Good, maybe you'll finally cut that down. It blocks my view." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She stared at me like it was an expectation, not a request. When I told her I loved the tree, she sniffed. Well, we'll see. A week later, Saturday morning, she knocked holding a clipboard with highlighted printouts of sunlight rights. She claimed my tree was robbing her kids of vitamin D. She said, "If they get rickets, that's on you." I reminded her it was on my property. She frowned, muttered, "We'll see," and left. That night I told my husband, "I think we've got a problem." He shrugged. Just ignore her. But ignoring Karen turned out to be impossible. The next weekend, I caught her teenage son climbing my fence with pruning shears. I shouted, he dropped them and bolted. I went to confront her, and she just shrugged. Boys will be boys. The branches were on our side anyway. Spoiler, they weren't. I started realizing this woman thought my property was basically a community park. When I hosted 2 friends for a BBQ, literally 7 p.m., soft music, just chatting, she banged on the fence screaming, "Some of us have children who need sleep." Her kids were shrieking in their trampoline louder than we were. Then came the trampoline war. I bought a small one for my nieces when they visit. The very next day, Karen showed up demanding her kids be allowed on it. "It's unfair, they have to watch from their window," she said. I said no. She huffed, "You're cruel to children. You'll regret this." And guess what? 2 days later, I came home to her kids, bouncing on my trampoline while she sat in her yard sipping wine like it was totally normal. I lost it. I marched over and said, "Get them off my property right now." She didn't even stand up. She smirked and said, "Relax, they're kids." "What's the harm?" I shouted. "The harm is liability if they break their necks." "They are not allowed here." She sipped her wine and said, "Fine, but if they fall, I'll know who to sue." That same night, I ordered a lock for the gate and a camera for the yard. The next morning, she was pounding at my door screaming that I was spying on her children. I explained the camera was aimed at my trampoline. She said, "It makes us uncomfortable, take it down." I refused. She screeched, "This isn't over." The very next day, my trash can was tipped over and smeared with something that smelled like rotten eggs. The camera didn't catch it, but I didn't need Scooby-Doo to know who did it. My husband said, "She's testing how far you'll let her go." It escalated from petty to insane. She called the city on me, claiming my tree was diseased and dangerous. An inspector came, checked, and said the oak was perfectly healthy. He even muttered, "Not the first complaint we've had from her." A week later, another inspector knocked this time because she reported my deck paint as illegal renovations. The inspector looked exhausted and left. The breaking point came when I hosted my niece's 6th birthday party balloons. Cake, maybe 10 kids total. At 3 p.m., she banged on my gate screaming, "This is too loud, you're ruining my Saturday." I pointed at her yard where her kids were shrieking on their giant inflatable castle. She said, "That's different, they're my kids." When I asked her to leave, she yelled so the whole block could hear, "You're the worst neighbor. Everyone hates you, except 2 of those. Everyone were at the party and literally laughed at her meltdown." The next morning, I snapped. I gathered screenshots of texts, photos, inspector notes, everything. I took it to a lawyer. He suggested a cease and desist letter. "Stay off my property, stop harassing me, or we'd sue." We sent it. When she got it, She stood in her yard waving it like a flag, yelling, "She thinks she can sue me. Look at this." Neighbors peeked out. Nobody cheered. They just looked embarrassed. That night, for the first time in months, I sat in my backyard with a glass of wine and actually relaxed. Still, part of me wonders, am I the asshole for lawyering up instead of trying harder to get along? Some family members said I should have been more patient, but I feel like I did everything short of surrendering my yard. Was I too harsh, or just finally protecting myself from the neighbor from hell? Update 3 weeks later. The cease and desist worked. Karen still glares, but she hasn't set foot on my property. Her kids pout at the locked trampoline, but not my problem. 2 neighbors actually thanked me. They'd dealt with her nonsense for years. Demands to trim bushes, move cars, even repaint fences for curb appeal. I was just the first one who pushed back hard enough. She still mutters about me being unfriendly, but honestly, I'd rather be unfriendly than her doormat. For the first time since buying this house, I feel like it's really mine.